These are the 5 things that you need to know before buying your first short-term rental. Let's jump in. Number 1, the most important thing that you need before buying a short-term rental is to determine how much cash on hand do you have. The reason that this is important is because without having a cash on hand budget, you're not going to know what you can actually afford. Remember, there's different types of financing. There's seller financing, there's traditional financing, there's non-QM financing, and all of these have different requirements for how much money, cash, that you need to put down to buy the property. I always recommend that you have roughly $100,000 cash on hand because that's going to give you good flexibility, and on top of that, you need to have another 20%, which in this case would be $20,000, assuming you use the full 100 to buy the property, in reserves, okay? And the question is, why do we need to have the reserves? And that's because when you first start a property and it starts scaling up, you're going to lose a significant amount of money in the first 6 to 12 months, maybe even beyond that, regardless of how good of an operator you are. So cash on hand is the first thing you need to establish before buying a short-term rental. Now, number 2 is cash flow limits, okay? Making cash flow in a short-term rental in your first 12 to 24 months is extremely impractical, especially if you're continuously reinvesting and improving the property. Things like capital expense, maintenance, just general improvements of the property, all of those different things are going to take cash out of the business. And because they're taking cash out of the business, you might even be cash flow negative for 12 to 18 months. And that's okay because you're getting the other benefits. You're getting depreciation, you're getting appreciation, you're getting equity or mortgage pay down. If you buy at a discount, you're getting value there. But walking into a short-term rental thinking, hey, I'm going to make tons and tons of cash flow is just going to really let you down because the average short-term rental makes less than $1,000 a year in cash flow. That brings us to the third thing, which is your exit plan. Just like any deal that you do, whether it's buying a piece of property, a fix and flip, land, some type of investment portfolio, crypto, whatever it is that you're buying, there has to be a way for you to actually monetize on the exit. And here's what I mean. Let's say the house appreciates something like $100,000 over 24 months. Now that would be a lot of appreciation, but maybe this is a value add property or you've done something to make this property worth $100,000 more. Well, inherently, having the $100,000 in value is not really useful to you. And the reason is the only way you can tap that value is by selling. So let's give a quick example. I have a $500,000 house and it becomes worth $600,000. Let's say it's actually worth $650,000 just for fun here. Get rid of that, $650,000, okay? So what that ends up meaning is that there's $150,000 there in excess gain. Now, when we go to sell the property, I'm not sure what's going on there. When we go to sell this property, it's going to allow us to have, let's say, $50,000 in sales cost, so $100,000 in gain. So that $100,000 in appreciation cannot be realized until you sell the asset. Whether you sell it on seller financing or conventional financing or cash or whatever it is, you can't actually realize the gain. So the reason you need to have an exit plan is if you don't have the exit plan, you're not going to have a path to realizing the gain to get it. Just like if you bought something, think about like stocks or something, right? If you bought $100,000 in stocks and it went up to $200,000 over time, the only way to get that $100,000 in gap plus your original cash out is by selling the stock. Same thing here. You have to have an exit plan for the real estate that allows you to get to a place where you can actually liquidate. Then the next thing you need to know before buying a short-term rental is your alternatives. Okay, this is really, really important. I'm going to put this one down here. What are the alternatives? Okay, so I think there's like stocks, right? And mutual funds, right? That's one option. The other option is that you can, instead of holding, right? Let's say you don't want to hold real estate. You can do fix and flip. You can do BRRRR, right? There's a bunch of other strategies that you can actually do that don't necessarily have to just be a straight buy and hold. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that within the real estate realm, so let's put this as like investing, right? Just general investing. You have like stocks and bonds. You have your real estate over here. Maybe you have your crypto, maybe you have, life insurance, right? There's a bunch of different assets that people can invest in, but when you do these strategies, you have to ask yourself, what's your end goal? In the real estate realm, again, you're getting appreciation, you're getting depreciation, you're getting cash flow, and you're getting some pay down of the mortgage, right? So you're getting 4 different benefits. In stocks and bonds, you get appreciation, right? They go up in value, right? You don't get depreciation. You generally don't get cash flow unless it's the case of a dividend, okay? And there's no pay down because there is no debt, right? So it just is what it is. It's just assets, right? So the alternative to buying real estate is obviously keep stuff in cash, do stocks, bond, mutual funds, right? Do crypto, do other types of businesses, right? I guess we could also put in here, there's businesses that you can buy. And so when you get into these strategies, you really, really, really have to ask yourself, why am I doing real estate? What is the core benefit? Am I looking for a depreciation benefit? Am I looking for an appreciation benefit? Am I looking for a combination of the benefits? Am I just focused on cash flow? One thing I can tell you for sure from an alternative standpoint, if cash flow is your most important thing and we put real estate on one side and then we put a business on the other side, cash flow is always going to be better over here, always going to be better every single time. And the reason is because businesses are valued based on their cash flow, where real estate's valued based off of the asset price. So let me just give you a really quick example of an alternative, right? So let's say we have the $100,000. We know we can buy a $500,000 piece of real estate, right? That's 20% down. Now, would I recommend putting 20% down? No, I'd try to get a seller finance deal if you could to put less money down. But let's just say we had the concession and we want to put $100K down on your $500,000 piece of real estate. Well, that same $100K with an SBA loan on a business could buy you $1 million business, okay? And this $1 million business typically would spit $300,000 to $500,000 a year in cash flow, okay? So, and this, just to compare, this might throw off like $10K a year. So the difference is that we're not going to get into the technicalities of active versus passive, but just remember that a business is definitely active, which is why you're able to put down $100K, leverage tenfold with the SBA in certain instances, right? And get a massive amount of cash flow, because businesses trade at 2 to 3 times their cash flow. But that's a very active business. You have to operate, you have to put a lot of money in, there's a lot of risk. Over here on the other side, even though this can be active, the trade or business can be active, your cash on cash return is going to be lower, kind of more like a stock, bond, mutual fund. You're still getting some of those benefits, appreciation, depreciation, equity, mortgage pay down, things like that. But the alternatives, you got to ask yourself, what are you trying to do as an alternative, okay? And then the last thing you need to ask yourself before, so we got the cash in hand, we figured out that cash flow is not really a big deal up front. Exit plan, we've talked about that. Alternatives, we talked about. And then it's time to purchase, right? And when I say time to purchase, what I'm talking about is how much energy and effort are you going to be willing to put in to get a deal? Most people think they look at like 10 homes and then they buy one and they're just like, boom, I did it. I bought the house, right? I looked at this house, I liked it, and I'm good to go. That's not going to work. On average, when I'm buying real estate for my own personal portfolio, I might look at anywhere from 80 to 100 homes, and those homes break up into traditional purchases, which is like with a bank loan, seller financed, and then what are called wraps, okay? And we'll talk about that in a second. But traditional finance, that's when you go to a bank, okay? Seller finance is when the seller owns the house in cash, right? Or a seller carry. And then a wrap is when somebody has a house, okay? And they have a mortgage on that house, and they have some equity, okay? And so they wrap their mortgage that they have and their equity together, and you have a single payment. So maybe their payment's $2,000, but they have some equity, so you're going to pay them $2,500 a month. That's what a wrap is, okay? Regardless of which one you're doing, the time to purchase is going to depend on this. With a bank, anywhere from 30 to 60 days to close, typically, okay? With seller finance, 5 to 7 days to close. With a wrap, 5 to 7 days to close. Now, the question is, why is there so much more time over here with the banks than with cash or wraps, or seller financing or wraps, I should say? Now, the reason that is because of underwriting, okay? So when you go look at the timeline, let's say you have day 0, and I'll put day 90, and I'll put day 180. This is your sourcing period. I'll write this here, sourcing, and then this is your closing period here. So you might source properties for 90 days to find the right deal, look at 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 properties. Then you put a purchase sales agreement together, and then you go through the closing process. And from day 90 to 120, that would be a short close, right? That would be 30-day close. But some of these can take even longer, right? They can take 60 days, 75, 80 days, especially when you're using banks. So just keep in mind that this whole process for somebody who's never been in real estate before, never looked at properties, has no idea what they're looking for, trying to find the right deal with the right amenities, with the right cash flow, with the right occupancy and average daily rate, it's probably going to take about 180 days. Now, this process, though, can be sped up significantly. And the way that you can speed this up significantly is by having good underwriting criteria before you start. Okay. So like generally I would look at like 10% down, and you'd say maybe 5 to 6% interest rate. And then you'd say under 800K. Boom, boom, boom. Those are your 3 criteria. That will make your sourcing, this thing on the left here, your sourcing period will be significantly better. And the reason that period will be a lot better is because you can easily say, is it 10% down? Yes or no? Check or X, right? Is it 5 to 6% interest rate, seller finance? Check or no, right? And will it be, under $800,000? Yes or no, right? And the cool thing is on price, if price is the thing you optimize for, when you look at on-market deals, right? So remember there's on and then there's off-market deals. On the on-market deals, you can just filter for the 800K or less. Off-market's a little bit more challenging because you don't always know the value of the asset. So just as a quick recap here, we'll go all the way back up to the top here. We got cash on hand, the cash flow limits, your exit plan that you have, the alternatives to investing in the real estate asset class, and then your time to purchase. So your cash on hand, you need to know how much cash you have. You need to recognize that cash flow is not going to be something that's super prevalent in the beginning. You have to have an exit plan. How do I tap that equity? How do I sell it, refinance, things like that? What are my alternatives to real estate? Because maybe you say, hey, I like real estate, but I have other things I can do with my money and time. And then the last one is the time to purchase, right? How long is that sequence going to take? If you can have all 5 of those things ready, you are prepared to buy a short-term rental, okay? If you don't have those 5 things ready, you need to kind of do this exercise that we just did, write it down, and you'll know if you're, when you're in a place where you're ready. If you like this kind of content, you want to see more, you can just drop in the comments. I'm happy to make more videos like this. This is purely educational stuff. I'm not trying to provide any type of investing or financial advice. I'm just telling you the process that I'd go through if I was trying to buy a short-term rental. I hope this has been helpful. At the end of the day, please, please, please build an underwriting process yourself that you like, that you're going to go through and set clean criteria. Don't just make random rules for buying real estate. Have very clear parameters of what you're looking for. How much down? What kind of financing? Where do you want the property to be? How many beds and baths? Like really shape your goal before you start looking for properties. If you do that along the way, it's going to become incredibly difficult. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.